I'm sorry.
No, it's good.
Okay. And I'll try to hold the microphone a little closer. I understand maybe I haven't been speaking loud enough, or I haven't been holding the microphone correctly. It has been said that Chief of Police DiPino recently stated to condominium residents that the department needs at least 10 additional officers, patrol officers. Furthermore, command staff have publicly recognized that the downtown area needs at least 2 additional full-time officers to increase the foot patrols available to improve safety and aid the perception of having a secure environment for our residents, tourists, and visitors. Would you support such an addition to the police force? And if so, how would you propose funding the costs associated with the increased staff in this next budget year and going forward?
Well, Chief DiPino. So, we have 25% less police than we had 15 years ago. That's quite an extraordinary statistic. It's born of the low morale in recent years, born of the fact that until recent times they haven't had a pay raise in 8 years. She'd had 16% in the last 3 years, but the others have had nothing. Not terribly good management. We absolutely, we just took the zones 2 and 3 that used to have 2 officers per car to 1 officer per car in a quest for statistical improvement in crimes. We catch a few more dogs chasing cats, but we put at risk both officers and public. You see, it's not just a question of loving cops and thin blue line, it's a question of being concerned about everybody. If I've been on a long shift, if I'm on my own, that term "I've got your 6" goes back to the fighter pilots and someone being able to see you from behind. But of course, if there's no one to see, there's nothing you can do. The answer that DiPino gave was that, well, they can call for backup. Well, that's not terribly helpful when my spouse is beating me senseless or someone's holding me at gunpoint. It's a ludicrous decision, and it's a decision which was born not of necessity. It was born of a city manager that actually doesn't terribly care for police departments. He's been fired in 2 other municipalities, and in large part has destroyed their police departments too. One of the first things absolutely that I would face is the number of police officers that we have. Well, I don't think we need 10, I think we need 20. And that only gives us around about 18 cops per shift, FYI. There's 168 hours in the week. So at any one time at the moment, we don't have a minimum standard, but the average by roll call is 16. 16 with 100,000 people isn't very many. There have been days with sick, etc. over the last few weeks when we've had as low as 9. Imagine that. 9 officers for the whole city. So we're not talking about maybe it'd be nice and you could talk to a cop, and yes, we've all seen them having coffee and donuts. What I'm talking about here is genuine public safety concern. It is absolutely a top priority. It's something that's been left alone, and it's not because my son is a deputy sheriff, it's because I want to feel safe. And one of the fundamentals, and Hagen says this too, one of the first and most important things is the basic stuff. Public safety is basic stuff. And as far as I'm concerned, we'll find the money, and I'll tell you, we could find it from a lot of savings. We can talk about that too.
Let me just follow up on that question a little bit, because you didn't really answer the second part of the question, and that is, how would you propose funding the costs associated with increased staff? We know you want increased staff. How would you
let me tell you, we got some good stuff. 150 grand a year we just ponied up for a second assistant city manager. 50 grand a year for a recreational specialist at Robert L. Taylor Park. I think there's someone to teach you to play. I made a joke about that. My 9-year-old, and I'm paying 50 grand a year to play. It's layer upon layer of bureaucracy. One of the best examples, briefly, is Marina Jack. We get 200 grand a year rent and 3% of the sales. I asked for the audited accounts from Marina Jack's because Little Bird told me that they divested themselves of the underwater rights, which is essentially the bow slips there, last year for $43 million. $43 million, people. Now that goes to a lot of police officers. The reality is that every time I turn something over at City Hall, I see extraordinary waste, extraordinary indifference to taxpayers' money. So if you're talking about, average cop costs us 100 grand a year with the pensions and so forth. 20 cops is $2 million. I could find you $2 million in about an hour and a half.
Brody, you have 1 minute in the bank, because that gave Mr. Hyde an extra minute. You can use it now or later, so.
Would you repeat the question? Would you repeat the question?
Oh, sure. The question is with regard to needing additional officers downtown and citywide. Chief DiPino has recognized that she needs at least 10 more officers. Command staff has recognized that we need at least 2 more foot patrol officers downtown to fully staff the foot patrols. Would you support such an addition to the police force if you were elected to the commission? And if so, how would you propose funding the costs associated with the increased staff in this next budget year and going forward?
Okay. Yes, I would. I've been talking about this for quite some time. Having come from a law enforcement background, my prosecutor experience, you know, you realize, you learn a lot about law enforcement, how to protect a city. And one of the things you learn is there's reactive crime and then there's proactive crime. When you reduce the number of police officers, you are left with basically nothing less than reactive responses. So they show up at a scene, they try to do an investigation, they show up at a crash. Take DUI, for example. Show up at a crash after the fact. Doesn't really help the person they crashed into. Proactive policing, on the other hand, is when you have people out there that are proactively trying to stop crime. They're pulling people over before they crash into somebody, or their police presence is preventing an issue, or you have the numbers to do undercover operations, which are basically 99% of any kind of narcotics sale in order to get a drug dealer off the street or out of your neighborhood. It's an undercover buy. You need officers to do that. So I do want to see our city increase the number of officers to a working level. You know, they just, when you look at the level that the sheriff has, and you look at the level that the police department have, it is stark. Sheriff has so many more officers. They're able to do DUI task force. They're able to do these things. So the Sarasota Police Department doesn't have these dedicated units, and it's a problem. You know, downtown Sarasota, we talked about the homeless issue. If you ask the narcotics or the officers, they'll tell you we have a narcotics problem, not a homeless problem. But we have very serious laws on the books that we could enforce. So people that are seeing hand-to-hand transactions or seeing drug deals happen in open daylight at the bus stop, you know, there are serious laws that we could enforce. We just need the officers to do it, to put these operations together. So I do think that we need it for a number of different reasons. I mean, that's just public safety. That's what we all expect. How we would pay for it. And this answer is going to go to a lot of the questions that go towards that basic, those responsibilities of municipal government and how we're going to pay for it. And some of our obligations that we haven't been paying for in the past. We have, whether we like it or not, approved $1 billion of construction and units that are being built in the city of Sarasota. Hundreds and hundreds, thousands of units. These buildings that you're seeing go up are starting at, outrageous prices, $900,000, $1.2 million. Okay, our tax base over the next several years is going to expand greatly. The property values that we have already in the city, just because the economy is doing better and the property values are going up, increase as well. Our budget increases by millions of dollars every year, but our city finds a way to spend it. What we have to do is be conscious about that and use those funds wisely. That's why I think this election in particular is so critical, because we have the opportunity to address some of these critical issues, address the pensions that we haven't been able to fund for a long, long time, address the city police, build infrastructure with this expanding tax base. If we lose it, you know, we'll be looking back wishing we did.